I always start off by just saying that we're here in Casa Grande with Frank Davidson. And you've been superintendent in Casa Grande for...
This is my 12th year.
Yep, yes,
12th year.
So let's start there. Start with, tell us your path to that position, and tell us a little bit about Casa Grande Elementary.
Okay, I will do so. My path to the Casa Grande Elementary School District Superintendency began when I came here as an elementary principal in 1991. I was an elementary principal for 2 years, then assistant superintendent for instruction for 4 years, and as I say, this is my 12th year as superintendent. So my 16th year in central administration here in the district. The school district has about 8,000 students, and we have 12 schools. It's a very diverse population. We have about 50% of our population that are Latino. We have about 35% Hispanic or Anglo, and about 6% African American, 6% Native American. We cover about 400 square miles, so it's a large geographic area that the district covers.
And you said that 8,000 students. How different was that when you started your superintendent?
It's about double. We've doubled in size roughly, yeah. And most of that growth trajectory has been in the last few years. We historically Casa Grande grew at a rate of about 2% a year, and then just in the last few years, most of that doubling in size happened just in the last few years.
It seems massive when I drive into town. I can't believe the difference when I come in.
We've opened 4 schools since 2001. So that's we opened 2 last year, none this year, and
kind of peaceful.
It's kind of peaceful, right? Time will tell what will happen. We're in an unusual economic time right now, so time will tell.
So you may see some more change with that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Surprisingly, so far our indications, our growth rate is much higher for this year than we had expected. So we're still growing.
Reasonably priced housing, and so families are happy with that.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about roles and responsibilities of the superintendent. When we get our novice superintendents into the seminars, that seems to be where am I really supposed to be spending my time and energy and effort? Right. So tell us a little bit about what you think.
You know, my first few years as a superintendent, I think I was so overwhelmed with just the management of the district that it was really hard for me to get a grip on what my real job was as a superintendent. I think every superintendent can relate to that. You deal with so many personnel issues, parent concerns that sometimes you're dealing with things that are urgent but not important, instead of being in that quadrant of dealing with stuff that's important but not urgent. And finally, I think by about the 3rd year I was superintendent, I realized I needed to be spending more of my time on creating and articulating a vision for the district. So one of the things that I tried to do was to try to pull together the pieces of that in writing. For me, I think best through writing, and so I had to really articulate in writing, what it is that I want to accomplish. So I think a major role and responsibility for the superintendent is creating and articulating that vision. And kind of the next piece of it is it can't be, the superintendent's vision has to be a shared vision. It has to be a vision that your board buys into, that your staff buys into, certainly that your principals buy into, that your community can support. So I think that those are major responsibilities. Another responsibility I think that we as superintendents have is identifying and developing the talent within our districts. It's been my good fortune to be able to, since I've been here, as I say, both as assistant superintendent and superintendent, I've had the opportunity to hire every principal who's in the district, and nearly all district level administrators. And so you have, at least in my case, I've had the opportunity to see a lot of talent and to develop that talent. And I think that's a very important role for the superintendent to be able to look at people and their skills. There have been some instances, for example, where we have had people who were obviously had a talent in a particular area, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to create the position for them in advance of us really being at a point where we were really ready to start going in the direction of that position. For instance, in professional development, we 4 years ago I created a professional development director, and one of the reasons was because I had a new principal here who was obviously very skilled in that area. He's gone on to develop a fantastic professional development program. We weren't quite ready to do that at the time in my long range planning, but it was the time was right, and I had the person here. So I think that's another important role for the superintendent. I said creating and articulating the vision is an important role. I think that creating the systemic conditions for follow-through is important as well, because if you just have the mission and vision and goals as something pretty on the wall, it doesn't really take you to where you need to be. So you have to have the systems for follow-through in implementing that vision and your goals and your measurement tools. And so that, I think, has been a real important role for the superintendent to play. Lastly, I think what I would mention is just the importance of the principal, or pardon me, the superintendent serving as an instructional leader for the district. It's easy, as you know from experience, it's easy for distractions and obligations to pull the superintendent away from the instructional role.
Yes,
and it's easy for you to kind of absolve yourself and say, I don't have time for that because I've got personnel issues to deal with, I've got buses, I've got cafeterias, I've got all these things. But the fact is, we communicate a lot by what we pay attention to, and superintendents need to pay attention to instruction. That is our central job. And so I think just modeling that interest in instruction, going out and observing classrooms, requiring principals to tag along with you as you go observe instruction in classrooms. I think that those are a couple of ways, and just being involved in instructional planning to the extent that you can. I think that those are important roles.
I'm really glad you brought that piece up, because I'm going to kind of move there.
Okay.
In terms of centering the board.
Okay.
There was one question I wanted to ask before that, though, that as you were talking, and I was thinking, okay, you're starting your 12th year, and as I listened to you list those roles and responsibilities, I thought, you've been nonstop high gear then for 11 years. That's a lot of change. You've managed a lot of change. You've had to bring the community on board, work with the community. You've had to develop that shared vision. And I think where I'm going with that comment is just, so many times the superintendent can go into a new position and think it'll take me a couple of years. And what I really kind of heard you say just now, not in these terms, is I've spent 11 years really developing this to the point that I believe we're moving where we want to be moving as a collaborative group of educators. And that fascinates me, because a lot of people don't necessarily understand that timeline. We tend to think in little chunks.
Right, you can change the world in a couple of years.
And you're talking about a significant portion of your life, and I'm sure your family's life as well, because they're involved with you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But so you alluded to that instructional leadership piece, and I'm so glad you did, because I think that's that whole leader of learning is a part that all of us have to grapple with. How do you work with your board to keep them really focused on that? And along with that, obviously in a school district of this size, you have a number of support directors and people that work with you whose first vision is not necessarily sometimes in the classroom. So how do you keep everybody on that focus and moving along and headed in that direction?
Well, I think one of the things that really helped us is back in the spring of 2002, I spoke with our board and communicated to them that we certainly weren't where we needed to be, and we weren't performing as well as we could be. There were wide gaps in performance between our district and the state. There were wide gaps in performance between students of different socioeconomic levels. And so we determined that we needed to set a new course for the district. We pulled together a community group of about 40 individuals, principals, teachers, school board members, parents, teachers. We just had a very diverse group, and for 2 days we really went through our data and tried to articulate as a group, okay, where do we need to be going? And I had tried to set the context by indicating that we needed to address academic performance. That was the fundamental shortcoming in our district. And we came to an agreement that our mission as a district was collapsed into this statement of success for everyone. The responsibility is yours and mine. And we communicated real clearly to all departments at that time, our job is instruction. And our job In the business office, it isn't to issue requisitions, it isn't to maintain accounts payable. Our job in the business office is to ensure that students learn. Our job in transportation isn't to get kids to and from school. Our job is to help kids learn, and we have to get them there and on time and in a good mood and ready to learn in the morning. But one of the things that was really profound after we adopted this mission and started initiating some strategic reforms, I think of some of the things that our bus drivers did. They started looking for ways that they could academically support what we were doing in the classroom on the bus by having math games available for kids to play with. And so, that's just one example, but it really, I think, illustrates how different departments started to see their role as, my job is improving instruction. My job is to close the achievement gap. My job is to provide whatever support is needed so that what goes on in the classroom is exceptional. And so I think that has helped, defining the mission the way that we did, and then just communicating that this isn't just going to be something pretty that we're going to put on the wall.
Right.
This is going to be the filter by which we measure all of the decisions that we make in the future. So I don't know if I addressed everything.
You did, and I love, every time I go on your website, I see that the
Mhm.
responsibility is yours and mine.
Mhm.
And I think, how wonderful it is to be the superintendent, that when the issue comes to you, you then can look right at that and say that to
Mhm.
everybody. The responsibility is yours and mine, so what are we
Right.
going to do? And that to me is just a gift as a
Mhm.
superintendent, and a great way to maintain focus, because that is, I think, for the support departments, that's something they can really hold on to.
Mhm.
What's our responsibility in this? Yeah. Talk a little bit about your board superintendent relationships, because I know that's something you've worked with a lot, and you've talked with me about it before. So.
Yeah. Well, I feel very, very fortunate in our district. We have had tremendous board support over the years, even though we've had tremendous turnover in the boards. During the years that I've been superintendent, there are currently two board members. No, there's one board member who was on the board when I was first hired. So we've had regular turnover. So we've had a variety of community members who have served in that capacity, and yet I found pretty constant support from the board in terms of their support for our academic goals and our mission. One of the reasons that I believe that is so is I have tried very hard to involve them in understanding instructionally what we're trying to accomplish. So, I mentioned in 2002 we adopted a new mission. We pulled a school community task force together to decide how we were going to reform and change our district, how we were going to implement our continuous improvement model. But prior to that, I tried to set the stage by taking members of my board to visit some school districts that I felt had captured the essence of what I thought we needed to do, which was to really engineer our system so that we had systems in place for what times when students don't learn. That's been the most significant change. Is we know that every day, while teachers deliver great instruction every day, there are children who don't learn, and our traditional model has been teach them, maybe test them, and then move on. And what we try and do in our district is teach them, test them, make some instructional decisions about what more they need, reteach, intervene, continue providing them opportunities, and then move on once we've given them opportunities. So again, what I did is I took board members to Loma Terrace Elementary in El Paso, Texas. I took them to visit the Brazosport Independent School District south of Houston.
Yeah, I've heard that superintendent speak. Yeah.
Took them to visit Rancho Viejo School in the Crane Elementary School District out in Yuma. These were all schools that were making significant strides in meeting the needs of all children. And so again, provided that background to the board so that by the time we got to the school community task force, they had so much momentum about what they wanted to see happen. They were really on board. Then after we had our school community task force meetings, we adopted our new mission, our new focus. The board felt so strongly about communicating real convincingly to the community that they adopted their own statement of support, and we posted it on our website. They adopted it in an open public meeting, and it was really a way of saying to the community, we realize that there are going to be concerns as we move toward trying to ensure that all students meet academic standards. We realize that there are going to be concerns about electives that we're no longer going to be offering, about the fact that we're reducing the amount of recess time that children have, that we are really being hard-nosed about how instructional time is used. We realize there are going to be those concerns, but the fact is our job is to meet the needs of all children, success for everyone. And so that's what that statement, what they intended to communicate with that statement is, this is what we're about, and we're not going to be dissuaded from this course of action. And interestingly, though I have almost a completely different board now than I had back in 2002 when they adopted that statement, the board last year insisted that they adopt a new statement to reaffirm that once again. So last August, the governing board adopted a new statement, essentially saying the same thing, but saying this is the course of action that we want to take. And that is powerful for the community, and powerful in articulating how we're going to do business in our schools, because it really creates a clear picture that we're going to have a uniform and viable curriculum for all children throughout the district, that we're going to provide uniform resources throughout the district, that we're going to have a uniform instructional calendar for children, so that as they move from school to school, they're not going to have gaps in learning because this school was using Scott Forsman reading and this school is using Houghton Mifflin reading. Right, so we have this guaranteed and viable curriculum, and the board's support for that has been absolutely critical. So I think, taking the board on those visits, we don't traditionally think about doing that when we visit other schools, to take board members along.
You're right.
We've done that, and it makes a difference. Not all of them can do that, but taking them to visit other schools to help to capture that is important. And of course, I take board members out to visit our schools as well now, just so that they can. It's a good way to tie in what we say we want to do in our strategic plan with what's going on in the classroom. Right. Yeah. So we can say, remember how we said it's important that we post instructional objectives? Well, one of the things that you notice as we go in classrooms, you're seeing instructional objectives posted in every classroom. Or we'll say, remember how we talked about the computer software that we're going to use in our labs to academically support our goals in reading? There's the software that we purchased. You got to see it in use in the computer lab. So I think those are some other ways to tie it in. One of the other things that we have done that really came about by virtue of our board's initiative, and it's been wonderful. But one of the things that our board wanted to do is they wanted to refine the self-evaluation instrument that they use to evaluate themselves. And we've had an instrument that's the typical instrument that schools throughout Arizona use. The Arizona School Boards Association
does,
it's fine, right. But there's tremendous value in having your own board develop their own instrument, because one of the things that it forces them to do is to think about, well, what is my job as a board member? What does it mean when the superintendent tells me that the board's job is policy making and the superintendent's job is administration? What does that really mean, and how do we evaluate ourselves as to whether or not we're really fulfilling our policy making role and staying out of the day-to-day management responsibilities? And so I think that the exercise of doing that, there's great value in doing that. But our board asked me to draft an instrument. That was a great opportunity for me to then structure, okay, here's what your job should look like, and here are the things that you really should do. So I created a rubric that really looks at systemic change and I assigned differing descriptions at varying performance levels, so that the board could see, here's what proficient performance would look like, here's what inadequate performance would look like in this area. And our board is really proud of that instrument, and I think they really take it seriously, and it's really helped them to understand how they can best support systemic change in the district.
That's remarkable, because I've listened to superintendents, new and experienced superintendents, say to me, I can't get my board to use a self-evaluation instrument, and we really ought to be having that discussion. We're not, and I also hear them say, we're not doing real well with my evaluation because we're not looking at those items together as a team. And that's just a perfect description of how valuable that can be. Because that's something, and you know, I mean, you've been the new superintendent. Granted, it may have been a little while ago, but as you talk to new superintendents, you know that what a struggle that is for them. As they try to figure out, now, how do I relate to these 5 people? We all have the same business at hand, but we all have to understand our roles. And so that's a great description.
Well, it only took me 10 years to get there, 8 years to get there.
But you know, as I listen to you, I think about that. I think about how patient you've been and how you've been very methodical.
Or slow-witted.
No, patient. Because I'm thinking, you know, to take those trips, for example, you had to really think about first, where are these places that, you know, do the good things, and then to have the conversations about, could we go there? Because I'm sure you didn't just barge in one day and say, hello, we're all going on a field trip. I'm sure you didn't do that. And so that you know, really gave people time to get on board. I think there's a patience level that often, as we come into our positions, we forget. What many of us had it as teachers, but we forgot that when we were dealing with adults, we all needed to keep that and keep some of that planning. And so, as I'm listening, I'm thinking this is a wonderful lesson, either for those who aspire to the job or those who are new to it, because you can't do it in a year. You can't do it in 2. No. You can't do it in 3. I mean, there's a very much a progression, and, you know, and you have to be patient with the progression. People can't just go. Yeah.
Well, I think we intuitively know that about school change, that no one expects a school to be changed in 2 or 3 years. And a district is a much larger institution or organization. You have to change so.
Someone told me once that they knew us, and I don't remember the exact specifics of this, but a superintendent who used to keep up on his right above his door the number of hours it took for a large ship to make a 180-degree turn, and it was just some numbers, and people would always ask him, you know, what are those numbers? And he would say, well, that's how long it takes a 2,000 passenger cruise ship to do a 180-degree turn. And I keep that there so that when I start getting impatient, I remember that if it takes that long for a boat to make that turn, it's going to take me at least 10 or 12 times that to do what I'm doing. And I thought that was always a great analogy, and I should find those numbers.
Well, and new superintendents coming in, I think they need to be patient with themselves and realize, you know, if you're coming into a new district, you're going to have to learn the culture, learn the people, and they shouldn't expect to do any more than earn trust and credibility their first couple of 3 years. That should be what they
and that is the advantage, I think, as you talked about your career when you've been in the district as the assistant superintendent. I used to talk about that as I got here first. You know, you've been there, so you can take some of that. Of course, sometimes we take some baggage too, but you can at least understand the district from that perspective, and it can be a huge gift.
Oh,
it's very different when you walk in. I did learn that. Talk to us about challenges and rewards of the superintendency. How do you see those?
Well, one major challenge is obviously meeting the needs of all learners. You know, No Child Left Behind is a tremendous notion, a tremendous concept, you know, and who could possibly argue with the idea of No Child Left Behind? We want all children to succeed, and you know, and personally, as someone who grew up in poverty, I'm committed to the idea of ensuring that all children learn. However, at the policy level, it's very hard to write good policy to make No Child Left Behind a reality. Or for that matter, to make success for everyone a reality. You know, our mission statement. I remain as committed as ever to meeting the needs of all learners, but we face tremendous challenges in meeting the needs of all learners. We have in recent years significantly increased the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding AIM standards across all ethnicities, but we continue to struggle with English language learners and with special education students. Interestingly, we've diminished the percentage of students who are qualifying for special education because of our early interventions. We've seen that percentage drop from 12% to about 9%.
Really?
So we know that our interventions are working, but we still have 9% of the children that are really hard to reach. And ELL children make up about 10% of our enrollment. And so those combined, that's 20% of our population. That is a needy population, a population that it is critical for us to serve. But that's one of the challenges. Another one of the challenges that I think we face is, I think that people, if you look back in American politics, you see that people have always been uncivil. Finding a lack of civility is not hard. You can go back 200 years and find a lack of civility, but we seem to be achieving uncivility as a society at unprecedented levels, in my opinion. I think that what people see in mass media and the universal access of the internet provides poor modeling for what civility would look like in popular media, and I think that the access of the internet provides tools for anyone to act in uncivil ways in a way that reaches a wide audience. And as a result, I think that's one of our challenges is, as superintendents, I think that by and large school administrators are pretty nice people, and they have pretty good temperaments, and they have good faith in their fellow human being. But there are a lot of people with whom we interact that really don't share anything like our values about how to treat people. And one of our challenges is, I think, in dealing with that element in our society, because in my opinion, I think that the lack of civility in discourse and the polarization of debate and the willingness to kind of totally demonize your opponent is real unhealthy. I try and articulate that in our district, as we debate issues, we want to be hard on issues, soft on people. So, and I repeatedly say that we can tackle issues and be as tough on those issues as we can, but let's walk away from this and still respect each other as human beings. And that's a hard thing to do with some real thorny issues, as you know. And so I think that's one of the another one of the challenges. As far as rewards on the other side, for me, the student learning gains and to see what we've been able to do academically, that's been wonderfully rewarding for me. When you set some goals and articulate a vision and then put in place the systems to follow through on that, it's disheartening if things don't turn out the way that they do. But we've been blessed in that we've really made some significant progress, and that's very rewarding. It's also rewarding to see how our parents feel about our schools. We annually survey our schools, and for now 5 years in a row, 96% of our parents have given their child's school a grade of an A or a B, district-wide.
Very good. And
that's with 80% of parents responding to the survey. So we have a real high response rate. And that's tremendously rewarding because we have schools. I described earlier the demographics of our population. We're about 65% free and reduced lunch eligible. So we have some schools that serve neighborhoods that are very distressed neighborhoods. And to see even in those neighborhoods very high approval ratings in those schools, that is very encouraging, because as you hear from parents who say, I don't want my child to go to that school because it's inadequate, it's old, it's in that neighborhood, we can say to them, well, here's what our customers have to say about that school. And because some of those schools have some of our highest ratings. And have some of our highest academic achievement performance levels.
So you can get them off the bricks and get them to look at the real issue.
Yeah, exactly. That's
an accomplishment in itself.
Well, and it is a daily battle. I guess the last reward that I'd like to mention, I mentioned earlier that I've been blessed to be able to hire every principal who works in the district, and it is tremendously rewarding to see the fruits of those decisions. Not every decision worked out well. I have misfired on plenty, and there are. I can easily rattle off half a dozen principals or assistant principals who are no longer here, who didn't succeed. But we have had tremendous success with the people that we have on board. I have I have the greatest respect for all of our principals and other district level leaders, and it is very rewarding to have had a hand in developing their careers, and then to see what they do in their leadership roles, and to see the job that they do in leading people. That is tremendously rewarding.
Makes your heart feel good.
Yes, it really does.
It does. You know, I'm glad you mentioned that civility piece, because I think sometimes for new principals or new administrators at any level in our work, it's a little startling sometimes. They just don't anticipate how much that's going to come at them and how much of it there will be, and you know, it's hurtful until they can move back and say, okay, like you say, let's get hard on the issue, but let's not be hard on each other.
Right.
And sometimes that takes a while, but
right.
It's a big piece. It is a big piece.
Yeah, it is.
If you were mentoring someone to become a superintendent, what kinds of things and I'm sure you are actually. What kinds of things or experiences would you want to make sure that that you provided so that they would be as prepared as you could have them be?
Well, you know, kind of as a backdrop to this, when, as I say, I was assistant superintendent for instruction in the district for 4 years before becoming superintendent. I was very close to the superintendent who preceded me. He was a wonderful mentor to me. And I was convinced that after 4 years of being his protege and being next in line, I was convinced I knew everything there was about being a superintendent.
Yes.
And I would walk into that job and it would just be smooth sailing.
That's right, because you knew.
That's right, I knew.
Yeah.
What a shock.
I had the same experience, so I'm with you on that one. Yes, it was, wasn't it?
I had no idea what I was getting into. And one of the things that I think was that I didn't realize would dominate so much of my job, particularly in the early years, is just learning how to work effectively with the board, because that is a big part of a superintendent's job, and ensuring again that they understand the policy-making role and the difference between that and the management or administrative function of the district, and helping them to understand how best to carry out their roles so that the district could fulfill its goals. And so as I'm mentoring others, I do try and help them understand what would be involved in working with the board and managing that. And you know, I have nothing but praise to say for our board members. We always have struggles. There are going to be differences of opinion on how to address issues. You know, reasonable people can disagree over issues all the time. So we accept that, but trying to help them understand how to do that. So as I'm mentoring others, I do want them to understand that, and so I talk with them about that. The second issue that I guess I did not realize when I was assistant superintendent, became superintendent, is the difficult personnel decisions that I would be making. I was close to them as an assistant superintendent, but it's a little bit different level as a superintendent, and there are some challenging, as you would know, challenging personnel decisions that have to be made. And so I think talking with them about that, you know, obviously you can't disclose necessarily everything, but helping them to think through how they might deal with some of these challenging personnel issues that come before us, I think is an important thing to do. You know, I guess the day that those become easy, then we're probably jaded, we need to move on and do something else. But I think that I think that's one of the things that I would want them to understand. And then lastly, I think in mentoring new superintendents, I really would want them to understand what it means to be a servant leader, because at root, that's really what we're doing. We're looking for ways to serve students, teachers, principals, and schools in order to help make their jobs, their roles, and what they do more effective. You know, individuals who think that they're going to come into this role and carry themselves through on charisma alone, I think they
be nice, but it won't work.
Nice, it won't work. No, the role is really about serving others and learning to be humble enough to accept that. I think is important as well. It's real easy to take credit for the things that go well in the district, and tough to take the blame that goes along with things not going the way that we want, but both come with the territory. And so having the humility of a servant leader, I think, is a big part of the role.
Now, as you've described that mentoring, you've also given a little advice. Is there any other advice you give to people who might be aspiring to the role? Aren't necessarily in a place where they're close to it yet, but they're thinking, I can be him down the road. What advice?
Well, I think one of the things that is really important is to have a real good understanding about what you value, just fundamental issues that are part of our being human beings. What do we value in our lives? What are things that we hold dear? What would we give up our lives for? Those are fundamental things I think you really need to think about. And one of the reasons being is I think as a superintendent you really have to have a good understanding of your rudder and what guides your life, because there are things that will pummel you from every side and try and push you off course. And you really have to understand, what is my life intended to amount to? What, at the end of the day, what do I want my epitaph to say? What do I want to leave?
Who am I really?
Right, yeah, who am I really? I know that sounds kind of fuzzy, but I think reading Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and really thinking through, what is my mission, and working through those kind of exercises, I think it is important. Because again, there are plenty of things that will knock you off course if you don't have a clear understanding and don't know what the end for you is intended to look like.
Yeah.
So.
Anything you want to add? Anything else you'd want to tell people as they go forth in this venture? Or anything we haven't covered that you'd like to say?
The U of A is a great program.
There we go. Don't cut that part out. Good for you. Chris Bosworth will be happy.
Well, absolutely. She's doctoral chair for one of my administrators who's finishing up her dissertation.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank. That was perfect.